Hello. The Divine Code reading for March 26th, pages 585 and 586. And we're reading from a little bit from yesterday's reading, the beginning of topic number 1. A Gentile who steals money or an object from another person is obligated to return it, even if the stolen money is less than the worth of a pruta. And there was a discussion about if a person is required to return the property, even though the sin of stealing is a capital crime, would a person still be required to return the property? And that'll be revisited in a couple more footnotes in today's reading. If he does not return it himself, the court should forcibly take away the object he stole and return it to the owner. We don't say that a court does not deal with matters worth less than a pruta. According to the exclamation in the preceding note, the Gentile thief is obligated to return even less than a pruta, since it is considered to have significance to the thief and to the owner who might not forgive this. The meaning of the word and the meaning of the Talmud's words. Tractate Avurim 62a and Avodah Zarah 72a. It cannot be returned. Is that the thief should not be tried in court with liability to capital punishment. No, that the thief should be tried in court with liability to capital punishment, and he cannot be exempted from punishment by returning the stolen object, even though this is needed to bring forgiveness from God. So what was discussed in yesterday's long footnote, and will be repeated several times in today's reading, is the question of if a thief returns the stolen object, would that be considered sufficient to exempt him from the criminal aspects of the crime of theft? And the argument is no, he is allowed to return it, but the returning does not exempt him, which is the meaning of the words it cannot be returned. It means he can't move the clock back by returning the product and act as if he did not commit the act of theft, because he did commit the act of theft, and therefore this would be more of a civil restitution versus a criminal restitution. They both have to be seen as separate activities. Therefore, one does not exempt the other. Whereas if it was a criminal activity, one might exempt the other. But this is seen as a civil and a criminal consequence, and therefore they're seen as separate activities. If the stolen object is not intact, the court should force the thief to pay for the value of the object he stole. So if he took if he stole a wheelbarrow full of sand, or the wheelbarrow, the sand that fills up a wheelbarrow, and he used that sand to mix into concrete, and now it's his sidewalk. It's no longer considered sand, therefore he can't smash up the concrete and return that, because it's no longer the same thing that he stole. He would have to pay for the value of the sand that he stole. Whereas if he stole the wheelbarrow and the sand, he could return the wheelbarrow, but he would have to pay for the value of the sand. Even though he returns a stolen object, the thief is not exempt from punishment in the court. Likewise, even if the thief is liable for capital punishment in court, this does not exempt him from returning the stolen object or paying restitution, as explained in the last paragraph. If he is not willing to do so, the court should forcibly remove the stolen item or the due amount of restitution from him and give it to the victim of the theft. As a footnote, Tosafot and other authorities mentioned above say that liability to capital punishment does not exempt the thief from payment, since for Gentile transgressors, a more severe punishment does not negate a lesser one. Now, this last sentence is I'm not really sure where the divine code is getting this from. That for Gentile transgressors, a more severe punishment does not negate a lesser one. I'm not arguing about it. I'm just saying I have no idea where this is coming from. It's probably going to be described more fully in the future translation that we're waiting for, in the laws of courts. There's probably somewhere in the rabbinic writings where this comes from. The general rule of thumb in Jewish law is that if there's one action that causes two or has two penalties, let's say a Jew cooks a cheeseburger on Shabbos. There's two violations that occurred with one action. And the one violation incurs lashes, the other violation incurs the death penalty. For the Jew, there would only be the more stricter of the two. He would not have both transgressions. Now, what's being said here is that for a Gentile, he would have both punishments. This is problematic on two areas. One is that it doesn't state where this principle comes from. It's a pretty strong principle. It doesn't state here where the principle comes from. And secondly, it's really unclear as to whether restitution would be considered a punishment. If a civil court decides a case, is that considered punishment to the person who lost the case? Or is it just simply a business matter that the person has to pay the other person whatever it is they have to pay, and that's not considered punishment because the person did not commit a sin. They're making a determination about something. The court is making a determination about a contract, and the way they read the contract is written in such a way that person A has to give money to person B. Is that considered punishment? No, it's considered fulfilling the contracts. Therefore, if we consider the restitution of the theft to be a civil matter, then it's not a punishment, and then this principle doesn't apply. If we consider restitution of the theft to be a criminal matter, now in the Jewish law, a person might be required to return the stolen object and then maybe twice the value or three times, extra value. The extra value is considered punishment. But would the principle be considered punishment, or is it just simply a matter of business that the court determines that you got to return the object? That's something that has to be going into more fully, and the divine code needs to explain where these ideas are coming from, because the Tosafot and the other authorities, as explained in yesterday's footnote, it's a long footnote, I don't see where they consider returning the stolen item to be punishment. They just simply say that when the person returns the stolen object, that does not exempt him from the other from punishment. Does that there's a missing piece that needs to be explained in this as to whether or not returning the stolen item is considered punishment or just simply a matter of civil arbitration. If a Gentile steals from a Jew money or an object worth the value of less than a pruta, even though he is liable to capital punishment for this, as explained above in footnote 10, that would have been in the first chapter of this unit, he is not obligated to return it. If he stole the value of a pruta or more from a Jew, he must return it. And we see it Tractate Sanhedrin 57a, and Tosafot and Rashba, as was described in the earlier footnote. And concerning interactions with, crimes that involve Jewish people, similar to the prohibition of adultery and the prohibition of murder, where this was also discussed, when interacting with Jewish people, the court jurisdiction moves into the Jewish courts, and therefore there's different from if a Noahide victimizes another Noahide, the rules change venue, so to speak. And it'd be like if a person was in one country and he commits a crime concerning another country and the other country tries it, then it's under the rules of the other country. And therefore it gets complicated in that area. But that's what's being explained in topic at the end of topic number 1. As explained in part 5, chapter 3, a thief and that was under the prohibition of murder and discussing the pursuer. A thief who approaches secretly to steal is considered a murderous pursuer. And in most cases, that would be the case, or in many cases, if a person breaks into someone's house, and there's differences whether it's daytime or nighttime and whether it's a relative or something, but generally speaking, if a thief breaks into another person's house, it's assumed that the thief is prepared to defend himself by killing the owner of the house or the occupants of the house if he's caught. That's the assumption. Whether or not it's the case or not, but that's the assumption that protects the occupants of the house to defend themselves, allows the occupants of the house to defend themselves against the thief by killing the thief if necessary, because they feel threatened by him. And he accepts the risk, that's the thief accepts the risk that others may try to kill him, as Torah law permits, if he is discovered breaking in to steal. So the thief understands. The thief who breaks into someone's house, or the thief or the robber who robs somebody on the street, needs to understand that person has the right to kill him for what he's doing in order to protect themselves. That would be like a Torah understanding of the principle of stand your ground. The person has the right to defend himself in Torah law. And the person that makes himself a thief accepts that risk, or he needs to understand that he's accepting that risk. This is not limited to the actual object. Even in this case, a Gentile thief must return what he stole. So he might think in his head, hey, he took the risk of getting killed. Therefore, he has some right over the objects that he stole. And that's not the case. He doesn't have rights over the object he stole just because he risked his life to steal it. It doesn't belong to him. This is not limited to the actual object he stole, but he must also reimburse the owner for any objects he broke or lost. So he breaks into someone's house and he breaks a window, and then he gets into the house and he knocks over a vase or something as he's working his way through. He's obligated to return not only the stolen objects, but also any damages that occurred along the way, whether at the time of his undercover theft or after his getaway. So anywhere in the process of the theft, anything associated with the theft, if he did damages, he has to return not only the stolen item, but he has to reimburse for any damages that were occurred. For Gentiles, as was explained in yesterday's reading, in chapter 2, topic 1, liability to a more severe punishment does not nullify liability to another less severe punishment. And again, that's like I mentioned with the other footnote, this needs to be explained more fully. It's not being explained here. Perhaps it's being explained in the Hebrew edition. I don't know, but there's principles that are being introduced at this point that have not been introduced earlier in the book that I'm aware of, and this needs to be explained. Rabbi Zalman Nechemia Goldberg adds that a Gentile thief is obligated to pay even for an item that broke by accident, only because of his negligence. And this is a principle in secular law also, and probably got it from the Torah, that if someone is committing a crime and things even inadvertently occur that was not the intention of the person, it's an accident. The person can't say, well, it was an accident, because they're in the middle of committing a crime. So if a person is in the middle of committing an theft or anything else, any of the other Torah violations for that matter, and accidentally things happen, he has to make restitution for anything that occurs in association with the crime being committed. And in this case, we're discussing the laws of theft. Thank you.